Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the National At Home Dad Network's July webinar in our free webinar series. We want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and join us. Today, we're going to be talking with Casey Palmer. Casey Palmer is a Canadian dad and blogger who's been blogging for a long time. If I'm not mistaken, I think you and I probably met right before the pandemic. Did you make it to Dad 2.0 in DC?
I did. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, that was actually my first ever Dad 2.0
Oh,
and
really?
sadly my last Dad 2.0.
Yeah, that pandemic changed a few things.
It did. It did. I did go to the virtual one, but
Same.
very much not the same experience. Um, So, one of the reasons that we brought you on here today is that you've been talking and writing about parenting for a good long time now.
Hmm.
And as time goes on, as parents, your perspectives change a lot.
Big time.
Um, I'm on the newer end of the parenting spectrum. I mean, my oldest just turned 9. My youngest is 6. I'm still in that, we're in elementary school. I haven't gotten
Hmm.
into like the middle school. We're not at puberty yet, so things are relatively calm so far. But I know now, how old are your kids?
I was gonna say this is not gonna have a lot of diversity on this call because mine are 9 and 7,
Okay.
so I'm right in the same window of
Okay.
time with
You're
you
in the
know.
same boat. Okay.
Hmm.
Now a little background about you. Tell us a little bit about like yourself and where you're coming from.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hi all. Casey Palmer from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I've been blogging. I've been sharing online in some shape or form since about 2002. I actually put my first website up in 98. So
Wow.
I've just been kind of online in that space for a long time. And I actually wasn't going to be a dad blogger. When that was coming up in my life, I thought, I have this kid. It's going to take a lot of time and energy. Maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. But what my peers and contemporaries point out, the point is that at that time was that we didn't really have a lot of dad blogging happening in Canada. We had a few people here and there, but uh, someone coming in with a different perspective and having, some past experience in blogging already, uh, definitely helped me to just kind of slide right into it and chronicle a lot of our family stories for many, many years. Yeah, being a writer since forever, I dabble in a million different things. So I try to use data and art and all sorts of things into it, and in order to really make it my own. And yeah, just so much transformation over the years. I turned 40 over this past weekend, so it's a good point to continue to evaluate things. But it's been a fun journey so far.
So what feels different at 40?
Not a lot. I think now I basically went around and told everyone's like, well, according to according to the mortality rates for Canada, I'm in the second half of my life now. It's like, Casey, you're so morbid. But outside of that, no, it's just, I have a piece coming out soon where I've been reflecting on just like what life was like at each decade, each milestone birthday. And I think I'm very much at a point now where I can very much embrace and accept what's around me and the life I've built for myself. And I know kind of the things I need to happen around me to make it feel like I'm making the most out of each day rather than trying to fit the mold that someone else has put together for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I won't lie. 40 was a while ago for me. A little over a decade ago for me. And honestly, what I remember from 40 was that a number changed, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Again, 40 for me was also married, no kids, like, working as a chef, enjoying life, running around. I mean, I enjoy life now, but as you know, once kids enter the picture, it changes things a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
Which brings to mind. You said that you've been blogging and writing for a really long time.
Yep.
So if your oldest is 9, so I'm assuming that's another 2014 birthday.
Yep. Well,
Um,
2013, late 2013, but
oh,
yes.
late 20. Okay, okay. So you got a year on me. Mine was probably barely. Mine was very, very early, 2014.
Okay, got
My
you.
daughter's a January of 2014 kid.
Okay.
What was the big change? I mean, obviously, suddenly you're a parent, but like, how
Hmm.
did it affect the way that you see the world when you went from being Casey Palmer to being, to be blunt, dad?
Yeah. No, it changed a lot of things. So it's kind of a mixture of all of a sudden your priorities change entirely. I remember, before my first child came along, I was trying to like pack everything in on this like imaginary bucket list of like I need to get all this stuff done before a kid shows up because everything's going to change. And I remember trying to go back to that world, maybe like, 3, 4 weeks in, kind of like, found a few hours to like head out to like a small get together when everyone's in bed. And I went back and it just didn't feel the same. Like I realized that my world had changed so much that all of a sudden the things that I valued or perhaps, not brought me joy, but like the things I put an importance on before just didn't matter nearly as much. And at the same time, that's how the world changed for me. But I changed as well. And the people
Mm-hmm.
who related to me before suddenly didn't relate to me whatsoever. I was definitely one of the earlier ones in my social group to have kids. So all of a sudden, I'm almost like this alien of a person. And they're like, we don't know how to talk your language, and the things I want to talk about are things that they don't care about. So I think the entire world around me changed for a while. It did take a good while to find other dads really who understood what I was going through. So I'd want to say probably it was like a good year, year and a bit, maybe 2 years before I was finally like, oh, like you understand, and you can find others who have that shared experience.
And how'd that work out in Canada? I mean, like, I'm in the States, and the National At Home Dad Network is largely based here in America. I mean, we've got members that are in Canada, we got, people in Europe and the rest of it, but for the most part, we're Americans. And
Hmm.
I know that dads here in America, a lot of us have a hard time finding other dads to connect with. I
Yep.
mean, there's mom groups
Yep.
everywhere.
Same here. Yep.
You Google parenting groups, and 90% of what comes up are mom groups.
Hmm.
And
90%. Only 90?
yeah, I'd like to believe it's getting better. I'm
I
trying to be
agree. I
optimistic.
agree.
So it was pretty much the same situation there.
Well, it was very similar. Yeah. I mean, my wife is an excellent planner, and she was very intentional about finding others who were having their children in November 2013 because one of the things that is, massively different up here is that at the time we had 12 months of maternity leave. Now it's gone up to 18 months. And so, taking that time off together with
Wow.
others who are going through that same experience was very important to her. And through that, we formed different friendships, whether it was like, the dads in that group, because it would be all the moms getting together. So the dads in that group, some of us get along, and some of us, really stayed in touch over the years, and some didn't. And then also, you also see when your neighbors start to have kids, and you almost like form like this natural bond that way. So I do now have a great set of dads in my neighborhood who I hang out with, and we talk and keep in touch and things like that. It took a while for all of that to materialize and come together.
Wow. I'm just trying to wrap my head around
I know.
18 months of
I know.
maternity leave.
I
Um,
know.
I mean, my wife works for an incredible hospital
Hmm.
with a really, really great benefits package, and she was
Hmm.
given 3 months.
Hmm.
And here in the States, that is almost unheard of.
Yeah, it's more like what, 6 weeks I hear down there?
Yeah,
That's
in
that's
general.
I
But
don't
she
understand
was
it.
she was given 3 months at 100% pay.
Yeah.
Which was granted, I mean, it was a privilege,
Of
But
course.
again, it was still hard for her to go back to work at 3 months. I mean, she was still, with me being a stay-at-home dad, she's going to work in a hospital, still having to like take breaks to pump breast milk and, carry the giant breast pump plus the ice
Yep.
chest to keep all the milk safe because I'm sure you remember that's liquid gold.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I would not have made it sanely through these first years of these children's lives without it.
No, 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 no. So you found your connection in that area. How long was it before you started writing from the perspective? How long before it changed your perspective in writing from the old like, hey, this is Casey Palmer just giving my views on life to this
Hmm.
is Casey Palmer, comma father.
I started writing about fatherhood before I was a dad. I
Oh,
think it was like, as soon as we were ready to announce that we were expecting our first to the world, I basically wrote a post about it, and it was called it the road to fatherhood. And it was talking about just a lot of the things I was doing or changing or preparing, whether it was getting, this massive, heavy change table and taking it from, somewhere down the road and finding a way. Like I literally had to like take this massive box and line up towels and carpet over to the nursery and flip it over bit by bit until I finally got it over there. Or like the ridiculous thing, like I had to drive in a snowstorm to get a glider across the city in a rickety rental van that had the suspension like shock that was totally
oh,
shot. Like the things
oh,
the things you will do,
oh
the
yeah.
things you will do for your kids. It changes over time where it's just like, it starts to become a little more logical, but in those early days, you're just like, no, I just got to do this thing. So I have to like
Mm-hmm.
do whatever. But all these stories were things that found their way into my writing from, 5 months before our first son was born, all the way, and then just kind of kept going after that of like, these are the things I'm learning and experiencing. And yeah, it made for a good set of relatable experiences that I think a lot of dads did not see represented, at least up here at the time.
Fair, fair. No, now when you live in Toronto, when you say you
Yes.
live in Toronto, you live in Toronto, right?
Actual,
Wait, I'm losing your audio there.
these
There we go. You're back.
they mute on their own. It's weird. I haven't figured
Okay.
out this feature yet. Yeah. Um, Apologies. Let's try it
I
this way. Okay.
that's why I got tired of messing with those and just bought an external mic for the
Yeah.
computer for
I
that
usually have my
exact
mics
reason.
downstairs, so it's been interesting. I might have to move. Anyway,
Yeah, no worries.
so yeah, no, I mean, okay, repeat the question because that messed me up.
Well, I was saying that, when you say that you live in Toronto, you
Oh
don't
yeah,
live in like the suburbs near Toronto. You live
no,
in Toronto.
it's actual Toronto. So I'm just east of downtown Toronto. We happened to get into our neighborhood back in '09, which, as we know, with due to very North American real estate related news at the time, was a good time to invest. We happened to be at a good point in our careers where we could make that happen. And we've been here since. I tell the kids all the time, this house can be pride for my cold dead hands because I've seen generations of what can happen when we make alternate real estate decisions. So,
Hmm.
yeah, and it's hilarious because now whenever we go anywhere, and I say I'm from Toronto, people are like, do you mean like the suburbs around Toronto or like something near Toronto? I'm like, no, 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 the city. I'm right in here, but I see it as a point of massive privilege. I always tell the kids, I compare and contrast. 'Cause I grew up in the suburbs, and I tell them, the things that I had to kind of figure out when I got to getting home too late from a party, or like the commute times to get to like different things. They are 3 minutes away by walking from two different subway stops, so the world will be their oyster. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
this is what I can gift you.
That, but again, that makes for a really different experience.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Durham, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, Granted, Durham is a speck on the map compared to Toronto. I mean, Toronto's a big city.
Yes.
Our entire downtown of Durham is probably like a few square blocks of
Okay.
Toronto.
Okay.
But we also bought in 2009.
There you go.
It was a good year to buy, man. It really was.
Oh, in
Worked out.
retrospect, like at the time, it felt like such a big number. Where I was like, "Oh my gosh, is this so much?
Hmm.
I don't want to do it." And then, 2023 cases, looking back at 2009 cases, like you're fine.
Yeah.
Everything's You're gonna be okay.
We ate nothing but chicken for about 2 straight years
Mm-hmm.
after we bought this house because we bought a
Mm-hmm.
much bigger house than we were intending, but we had the ability to buy our forever home, and we did.
Very nice.
But we don't have the public transportation system, but
Right.
it's less than a mile from our house to walk from here to downtown.
Okay.
So we can walk to the farmers market. We've got two different parks. Me and my kids walk to school every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a half-mile walk one way to get them to school.
There you go.
And we do that. Does that make a big difference I mean, other than, just having access to
Mhm.
the culture and the things that Toronto has to offer? Does it offer any other like changes in your kids' lives and in your perspective?
Massively. And just a note, I had to go on Google and do a conversion for the next thing I was about to say because we use kilometers up here. I was like, okay, let me figure this out for a second. So I'm good now. So for context, Toronto is about like 25 miles wide and about maybe like 10 to 15 miles, from
North
north to
South.
south. And you pack 3 million people in that city. And so like our city has something like a good 100 and I want to say 150 different neighborhoods. And so like every like mile stretch is like a different neighborhood and different experience. And it's great in some ways like everything we need is within like, a mile across
Hmm.
and half a mile high. So doctors, dentists, school, church, like all of it's in like a small area. So we do a lot of walking and biking to get to everything we need to get to. But on the other side of it is that if you need to experience anything else in the city, it is a short subway ride or bike ride away. So like, we have, 4 subway stops down is where we have a massive hill for tobogganing in the winter. You can go over to the east and there's like escape rooms and board game cafes. You can go all over the place. You can go, we say like a 10-minute bike ride down to the beach on Lake Ontario. So there's a lot of access for them to have different Toronto experiences. Like the experience can be changed at a moment's notice depending on where they're actually located. But at the same time, it can like because we have those neighborhoods and because everyone has like their small box of the city, like people don't often have to venture to other parts of the city. It can at times feel like, this is all there is if you're not exposing them to other things, which is why we spend a lot of time camping in the summer because we'll go 2, 3 hours outside of the city, spend a week at a time at different provincial parks and just get outside in nature, whether it's just with our family or in bigger groups, whether with friends or church or family. But we try to, find that balance between urban and nature so that they can see the multiple ways that life plays out.
Yeah. So living in an urban environment like that,
Hmm.
again, I'm not super familiar with Toronto or
Hmm.
Canada,
Hmm.
but it's a big city.
Hmm.
I'm assuming you guys have the same kind of crime problems that any big city has. Um, do you worry about safety for the kids?
Not massively. I will say, Canada and the U.S. do differ in a few significant ways in that our gun laws are way different.
Yes. Well,
So from shooting violence, like we don't have as much of that, but between robbery, carjacking, all that kind of stuff, yeah, that's everywhere. And there's Toronto has its homelessness and drug issues that we're always dealing with socially as well. So I think it's more important for my kids to be aware and to have the discussions early on of like this is the reality of what we live in, and we can either be part of the problem and be complicit by not doing anything about it, or we can be part of the solution. So I try to get them as involved as I can in whether it's discussions or different volunteer initiatives where we can, where we find the time to just kind of, whether it's boxing up gifts for lower income households at Christmas time and delivering them or things like that. I try to make sure that there's enough social justice awareness in their lives so that they know that, just because they perhaps won the lottery of birth and they have a lot going for them doesn't mean that's something they hoard and keep for themselves. So, yeah, it's a very multifaceted city. I think people get so caught up in their lives that whether they intentionally turn a blind eye or not, like everyone's just kind of in their bubble. And I'm trying my best to, through raising my kids as well as through writing, to shed a light on what's going on out there and also expose them to just the fact that not everyone has the same narrative through life.
Yeah. Now, again, please bear with me because
Not at all.
I have a little bit of, ignorance of exactly what Canada is like.
No problem.
I've been like I told you earlier, I've been to Toronto once. I was there for
Yep.
like 2 nights, and that was about it. And then drove back into New York.
Yep.
What is it like being in your, in your city as a person of color and raising kids that are black? That's a huge issue here in the States for a lot of parents. Whether it's, the kids falling in with the crime that exists within their neighborhoods, whether it's, interactions with the police or whatever else. Do these same kind of problems exist in Canada?
They do. So Toronto has the distinction of being known as the most multicultural city in the world. We have, I think, 51% of our city have people who are born somewhere outside of Canada. So it's large. There's a large visible minority population here. It's a very different, like just from visual aspect, it's a very different experience. But when you really start to like look at this data, I do a lot of mapping and whatnot to kind of figure out from a geographical context how things work. And our city is massively segregated because like in the core where all the better and older real estate is, it's like all old money, people being here for generations. And the people of color for the most part are on the fringes on the outside of the city. So there's definitely places where because people are pushed into that area with less opportunity, you got to find some way to survive. And there's a lot of systemic issues that pop up in that way. Where my kids live, they are very likely the only black people they interact with on a regular basis is themselves, me, and maybe one kid in my older kids class who they don't even really get along. So let's write that one off. But they have their own, they have to kind of come to their own understanding of who they are in the context of things. And I always kind of do check-ins with them on just like whether or not it's causing problems for them or people are pointing things out. How is it manifesting in their lives? I know that there's certain let's say baggage and truths that I was raised with that I carry as a black person in Toronto, that some of it I pass down as I think it's worthwhile for them to have in order to make sure they can go through life as smoothly as possible. And some of it I'm holding back right now for if they come into certain circumstances and issues, then I'm like, okay, we'll have that conversation very candidly. But as mixed kids, they're they're in a totally new category of figuring out their identity. There's a part of them that I can inform them on, but I think ultimately I'm just here to arm them with the right information so that they can come up to their own conclusions when the time comes up for them to start navigating the world a bit on their own.
Okay. So when we go back to talking about the perspectives of your writing,
Yeah.
you have your first child born late 2013. We all remember those early days.
Hmm.
Friend of mine coined the term and again, not this is meant as a joke, but you have the angry shitting football face.
It
Where
feels right. It
you know,
feels right.
basically we all remember those days. They're about the size of a football, and they fit
hmm
into those two categories for the most part.
hmm
But after a few weeks, after a few months, they start developing that personality. You start
hmm
developing that connection with them, and they suddenly become a person.
hmm
How did that change the way that you were looking at the world?
That took 6 months before my kid smiled at me for the reason that I was in the room and instead of like random things happening. So it was tough, right? Like you feel like a third wheel for a while. Where you're just kind of like, I just show up and help with this and do this and whatever else. So that was like my own personal struggle in the beginning when he finally was interacting with me, on that person to person level. It definitely changed things, and I remember from somewhere from like 6 months to maybe like early twos, I was trying to I almost envisioned breaking the cycle of like harsh parenting from generation to generation. I tried to be over affectionate and very, very, careful with the words I use, the tone I use, the way I carried myself emotionally around him, because I wanted, like, I have the chance to raise a child who's going to be better than me, and just like feel and see the world in very different ways. And then I remember one time I came home from work when he was 2, and the first thing he did instead of hug me was like sucker punch me in the stomach. And I was like, okay, nature and nurture. It's a thing. Got it.
Don't
so
don't let it fool you, man. They all sucker punch us.
so now I mean, the pandemic, one of the fringe benefits of the pandemic has been really getting to know my kids as people. So instead of like just being the bar for fatherhood being, I take you to this event, or I show up at this birthday party, or I know your friends, like I know who you hang around with at a nominal level. I finally know them as individuals. So like when they are fighting or a situation is going to pop up, I can start to see now well in advance how it's going to trigger and affect them, because of the individuals they are. And I have to say, all the time at home, I didn't have before, because I was always running around from events and doing things between my civilian day job and then my night job as a blogger and trying to fit all that in. Having everything kind of slow down for a sec gave me the opportunity to really understand, oh, these are the people I'm raising. I see. And it's definitely changed the nature of our relationship since.
Now, when kid number two was on the way,
Mm-hmm.
um, I know for me, it
Mm-hmm.
brought a whole lot of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter was 3 going on 4.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had just finally figured out how to balance things. I had finally gotten to a point where it was like, okay, I'm relatively, I'm relatively good on sleep.
Yep.
Still not enough, but I mean, more than I was getting. We have a schedule going, things are working out, and now we're going to throw somebody else into the
Yep.
mix.
Yep.
How did you get ready? I mean, were you, I mean, I say were you ready? Nobody's ever ready. But I mean, did you at least try?
I mean, I wasn't picture perfect. I mean, it's like, Sarah had a reading list for me. I never actually read the books. Nah. but but I did, I feel like the first kid gives you was like a frame of reference, right? So you now have like this entire spectrum of like acceptability, if you will, where it's like, okay, these are the things we went through with your oldest siblings. So like as long as you fall within that spectrum, I know how to deal with that thing. And the older they get, the more they start sending you curveballs well outside that spectrum, and you have to like deal with things on an individual basis, or every kid's giving you new territory. So both of them giving you
Mm-hmm.
new things all the time I didn't see coming. But in those earliest days, I feel like what I've been telling people is that for the first maybe like 2, 3 years of a kid's life, a lot of the books and everything are almost like universally applicable. There's things you do for every kid for the most part to take care of things in those early days, and you're good. But when they start having more words, more mobility, their world gets a little bigger as they start doing school and whatnot. it becomes much more of an individual journey, and you have to start taking bits and pieces of advice from different places and making a patchwork of how it all comes together. So I feel like I felt readier, and I would almost argue I was a better dad to my younger son in the early days of his life than I was to my older one, only because I had a better idea of what I was doing. But it has definitely normalized now. Like I can definitely say I'm a very equal, mostly an equal dad to both of them. It's definitely from a personality standpoint, the older one, oh man, he grinds my gears. He's challenging me all the time to be like he's righter than me, and I'm like, listen,
So you have two boys.
two boys.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But I'm
See,
always telling the older one.
we got the set. We got one of each.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
You know, I have a daughter. My daughter is relatively easygoing.
Mm-hmm.
My son, on the other hand, is a little bit more hands-on required.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's also the difference between 6 and 9.
True, but I will say, I mean, perhaps an unpopular theory, but I've seen on school trips and in the schoolyard how the girls and the boys interact, and I find myself wondering how we ever managed to keep a patriarchy going as long as we did, because I have 9-year-old girls who are like talking about their feelings and like making like jewelry for each other, and 9-year-old boys who are taking branches off of trees and hitting each other, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I have so many questions.
Yeah, yeah. There is a certain penchant among with my son to find a way to turn anything into a weapon.
Oh yeah.
That
Hmm.
and again, don't get me wrong. His big sister will go toe to toe with him on any
That's true.
given moment. It's
Hmm.
just she's more likely to pick up the toy sword
The weapon that is
and
weapon.
use it as it's intended, as opposed to him who will pick up some random item and use it as one.
It's like I didn't know that could be a weapon. Okay, points for creativity.
Yeah, yeah. Now, being as how our kids are really similar in age,
Mhm.
I know that, when 2019 came around, and at that point, I had one kid that was in pre-K, about to start kindergarten, and the intention was in the fall of 2020. No, I had one kid in kindergarten who was about to go into
Mhm.
first grade, and
Mhm.
one that was getting ready to go into preschool the next year.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I had this great experience where, my daughter was off in kindergarten all day. My son and I got some amazing bonding time, and everything was going great. And then, of course, the plague hit and the world shut down, and everything changed.
Mhm.
How did that change the way that you looked at parenting? I mean, you were a working dad, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, still are, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
we've
like you
both
have a day
been
job that
we've
you.
both been working parents the whole time. Yeah. Oh my gosh, how the pandemic nearly broke me. Like it was rough. Like they were 6 and 4 at the time. So yeah, like you said, similar ages, and we literally had to kind of give up on virtual school. So like they had an opt out clause in school. Like if this isn't working for you, like you can take your kid out, and as long as you follow the lesson plan and still learn, do what you got to do. So uh my wife Sarah, she found it super challenging. We both did, but she found it challenging to balance out this working from home and schooling from home and doing all this stuff, and we were trying to navigate it in our space and everything, and it was super hard. So she actually took a few months off herself, so everyone could just have a summer together of just like not having to focus on all the survival, right? We did take time outside. um we would just do it. We still fit in a camping trip that summer, but like having me focus on my work and getting that done, and everyone else out doing their thing, it kind of found the right balance for things. But yeah, we had to recalibrate all over the place with what we expected of ourselves and what was reasonable. I remember I nearly crashed and burned in like the summer of 2021 because I was just trying to do way too much at once. My habits weren't healthy. Um, so I think in the end, we learned a lot about what it is we actually need to thrive as a family, and we were able to strip away a lot of the layers of the things we thought we needed. But it, as with everybody, it was really hard
Yeah,
to figure all that out.
but most definitely a rough time. Now,
Hmm.
here in the States, there was a lot of, I mean, again, everybody went out and, stocked up on like 9 months worth of toilet paper
Oh
and
yeah.
canned goods. And I don't know if people did it in Canada. I went the opposite direction. Like other people panic bought toilet paper. I went out and
Mhm.
panic bought like massive amounts of Lego because my only thought was that I was going to be stuck in a house for, months and I
Yeah.
needed something to keep kids busy.
Yep.
As a result, now the entire house has a Lego habit. Uh, so there's
I love
Lego.
it.
Every
I love
like both the kids, me and everybody builds Lego now.
it. Mhm.
But were in Canada, was there this mentality that it was going to be over any minute now,
Oh my
or
gosh.
was it more of a this is going to be for a long time?
Okay. So.
Because my wife is a doctor and works in the emergency department of her hospital,
Hmm.
and she had no delusions because she was
Hmm.
in on the meetings with the people in the know. When they said, we're gonna lock things down, it could be 3, 4 weeks. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "I'll be surprised if there's school next fall."
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yep. Oh my gosh.
we were ready.
Oh, I wish I was in your shoes because I drank that Kool-Aid and then some. I was just like, when our premier said it was gonna be 3 weeks, I was like, yeah, instead of a 1 week March break, it's gonna be 3 weeks, and then we're gonna be back. I'm like, cool, I can do 3 weeks. That was the longest 3 weeks of my life. I remember like a lot happened at that time. I changed jobs. I had to go back at one point. I think in August of 2022, I had to go back to my original office and get all my stuff. And the number of things I've forgotten about, I'm like, I didn't even know I own these shoes. Like, what is all this stuff? I just signed up to like join a gym in February 2020, or maybe even like early March. I think it was very early March 2020. I decided to go to a gym, and
Hmm.
I had a full set of gym clothes there and everything. I'm just kind of like, who is this person? Like, what has happened here? But yeah, I definitely started the pandemic thinking it was going to be something very different, and then it was not.
No, no. And as it went on, now you said you did the opt out.
Mhm.
Now I don't know. I'm assuming the school year runs the same way in Canada, where you go to school for like 3/4 of the year and you get your nice summer break. Okay,
Yep, more or less.
so with our kids, we did the last quarter of 2021
Hmm.
as virtual kindergarten.
Hmm.
Um, I God bless my child's kindergarten teacher. Loved her to death. Miss Blue
Yep.
looked up within like a week of it starting and said, "Look, these kids are in kindergarten. I need to see your kid's face at 8:15 when we do roll call so that
Hmm.
I can report that they were in class. After
Hmm.
that, you do you."
Yeah. Yeah.
And we would hang out and do the bare minimum. And when her attention was gone, we were just done and we signed out. And we tried to do some educational stuff at home and left it at that. Um, the next year was first grade.
Yep.
Um, we ended up doing the whole year of first grade virtually.
Hmm.
Was it similar there?
I mean, we tried. We tried to figure it out. 2021 was funny. Like definitely, we started at school. The school year started in September, like right after Labor Day, but we started like 3 weeks late. And then I think from September, I want to say the entire school year was like you try to send kids to school, but they have a cold and then they have to be home for 5 days. They, it breaks out in a room. The entire class has to be home for 5 days, and it just kept happening over and over again. So I feel like that entire school year was like a bit of a wash as we all tried to sort it out and figure out when these kids could go to school and when they couldn't. But we couldn't. Virtual was just not working. The teachers that were trying to do virtual, they didn't love it. The kids didn't love it. All of it was just chaos, and we tried our best, but it really wasn't until the 22-23 school year where it finally got to a point where we're like, okay, like here's a bit of normalcy again of how this works. So I never want to go back to that.
No, no,
I never
no.
I never want to touch, like, even when I have virtual courses now, I'm like, I'm happy to get out of my house and come into a class. Like I can't. It's like I have memories that I try to get rid of right now.
Now, honest question.
Mhm.
How'd the kids do? I know there's a lot of social anxiety that happened to young kids here stateside where, they went back to school and honestly, kids forgot how to be around other people.
Very much so.
My daughter, when she went back to school in person, for second grade, she came home crying probably
Hmm.
for the first 3, 4 weeks straight.
Yeah.
And it was largely because, well, I wanted to play this game and nobody else wanted to play it, and they
Hmm.
wouldn't play my game. Well, did you offer to play their game? Well, no, I didn't want to.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, my kids had the benefit of some daycare and school before the pandemic started. The older one had done maybe like grade one or whatever by then, and the younger one had done a really good daycare program that was in the school building. Um, so they had a different context than kids who never did that and went through the pandemic. And then you lump them all together in one room. And the older one, he's an extrovert, so he's very much kind of like, oh, it's great to see people again. I could do all this. The younger one is very much more the introvert, and like he is getting really tired of kids being up in his face and talking, and they don't understand like the entire idea of like personal space and whatnot, and the interactions were just not what he remembered, and it was a huge problem. um I still see remnants of it now, but I feel like they've found their flows. The older one has um certain friends that he likes going to. Like he has a collection of friends across different social strata, and they sometimes intersect and not. The younger one has one or two friends who are really close with him, but they're like thick as thieves. And
Hmm.
that's how he expresses his friendships and how he prefers to do his interactions. So I think they found their people and how they want things to work, but I think there was a little bit of a struggle as everyone was trying to figure out what that looks like. I think we struggled as adults to figure out, handshakes or hugs, mask or no mask, or like all those rules and everything. Multiply that by several times over for the kids. The kids were just kind of like, we don't know anything. We're taking cues from you guys, and you're all clueless. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been good to see positive development, but I think there was a lot of relearning we needed to do, adults and kids alike.
Hmm. And now that your kids are back, going to school full time,
Hmm.
now you mentioned you're working. I'm assuming that you're going back into the office at least part time.
3 days a week
Okay.
right now. Yep.
Okay. Now, again, it was kind of different in our family because I stay home full time with the kids.
Hmm.
We also went through some really weird times where
Hmm.
eventually we figured out that periodically we needed to just pack up and go to an Airbnb
Sure.
because I needed to see four new walls.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I appreciate that.
it didn't necessarily have to be outside with a crowd of people, just needed something new other than the
Yep.
same three rooms.
Yep.
Um, but now that things have returned to some form of normal, and the kids are going back to school, you and the wife are both back to work and the
Yep.
rest of it, how are things changing as the way you look at life? I mean, the kids are kind of on that autopilot track, where they know the path. They're in school, they're studying, they do their homework, they have their friends. Where does that leave Casey?
You know what? That kind of brings us back to our theme. So, um, a complaint that many parent creators had is that, your kids get old enough where talking about them directly becomes a problem because, other kids or their older siblings have devices. There's a lot more, kids can get mean. There's a lot
Hmm.
more ammunition, if you will, if you're posting stuff about them that puts them in a bad light. And you never know, because there could be things that put them in a bad light that you just don't see coming because kids think differently. And nicknames and teasing can come from so many different kinds of places. So what has happened with my content and also my perspective on things is that I'm finding that now I have to be responsible a lot more for my own well-being and happiness in certain ways, right? So it's like I have to make sure that I'm doing things to keep myself psychologically sound so I can be the best, husband and father that I can be. And that was a huge takeaway from the pandemic, that the things I thought were the things that were doing that for me were not necessarily the right ones, whether it was like finding, like the amount of beer I was consuming, or like the amount of snacks and candy I was consuming in order to like give myself a feeling of like normalcy or happiness, turned out to, give me pre-diabetes, and I was putting me on the way to high blood pressure. And I had to change all that entirely this year. And so now I'm in a place where, healthier and a bit more clear headed. But my journey now is to make sure that I'm investing time, energy, resources into things that make me a better person and keep me, in the right mental space, so that when I interact with people, when I interact with my family, they get a better version of me rather than like the dregs.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. When we were all staying at home for a year and a half to, I don't know, it felt like a freaking decade. It really
Forever and
did.
a half.
Forever and a half. When we were all forced to sit at home by ourselves, I think a lot of us looked at what actual self care means
Yep.
as compared to what we thought it meant.
Yep.
For a long time, like self care just meant, oh, I want to do something that I think is fun.
Yeah.
And at this point, I can't really make up my mind whether I've changed my mind that self care doesn't necessarily mean I have to do something that I think is fun, or whether what I think is fun has drastically changed.
That could be it, honestly.
Because that all of that does make a real difference. I
Yes.
mean, before the pandemic, my idea of a good time was, let's just go out somewhere and eat as many different kinds of food as we possibly
Hmm.
can. Being a
Hmm.
retired chef, food is my love language,
Yep.
and like that's what it's all about for me. And at this point, my wife and I started a tradition when we first got married. And for all of the newlyweds out there, be really careful what traditions you start for anniversaries, because you have to keep that stuff going,
Hmm.
and you need to think about how sustainable that is.
Hmm.
So we started this crazy tradition where we were going to eat one course of a dinner for every year that we've been married.
I cannot.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So
Oh no.
last year was 14. Um, we've learned there's tricks. We went out for tapas
Okay.
because it's really easy to do 14 plates that are tiny. But we still brought home like 3 to-go containers. Pre-pandemic, we'd have eaten every scrap on that plate,
Mm-hmm.
without a second thought.
Yep.
Because, oh, it tastes so good, we got to do this. Now self-care to me is much more of a, at the end of this month, we don't do necessarily the camping,
Yep.
just because I like air conditioning a lot, a lot. I live in North Carolina. These days, the high, last night it dropped down to like 75.
Okay.
Today the high is going to be around 94, 95.
Hot days.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hot days and it doesn't get a whole lot cooler at night.
Okay.
So unless we're willing to drive out to the mountains, sleeping outside at night is kind of off the table for us.
Understood.
But at the end of this month, what we do end up doing is we're renting an Airbnb that's a small cabin out in the mountains. And, we're going to wake up in the morning when the kids get us up. I mean, I'd love to say that we're going to sleep in, but we both know better than that.
Don't lie to
You know,
yourself.
yeah. I mean, let's not lie. I mean, at about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, somebody's going to knock on the door going, "Can you make me breakfast?" And the only thought in my head is, "You want cereal. You are fully capable of doing this."
Yep.
But I'll get up and we'll do the dance and we'll make the cereal. But we'll spend our days going out hiking in the woods, swimming in waterfalls. That's a big one for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And enjoying being outside. It's not the kind of thing that I would have thought of as being self-care
Yep.
5 or 10 years ago.
Agreed. Yep.
And the biggest differences in there is that we're arriving on Thursday, so we'll hike like Friday and Saturday. Then Sunday morning, we're all going to wake up before the sun, drive 45 minutes. They're going to hang out while Dad does a triathlon. And then we'll go out and eat somewhere, and Dad will complain about not wanting to move for the rest of the day. And then we'll hike on Monday and Tuesday and drive home on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that self-care really has changed.
Very much so.
And I think that we're all putting a lot more priority on making sure that we're spending quality time with our loved ones. Not just saying, "Hey, it's family time, let's watch a movie."
Mm-hmm. I agree with all of that. It's very much more, I mean, one of the things we picked up in the pandemic was just like, my wife really wanted to get into biking to work. And she found that she really loved biking. So she got all of us more into biking. And now we're at the point where, we can do 10-mile bike rides with the kids. And we can go out and we hit the beach. We bike to places like the beach. We bike to places instead of driving or walking, just because it's an easy mode of transportation. You can get across places really easily. We got a bike hitch and we take things with us wherever we go. And it's
You can see mine behind me.
Yeah, there you go, right? And it's changed so much. Honestly, the way that we spend time together, you're right. The way we spend time together has changed entirely. And I think it's a higher quality use of time, the way we're doing it now. So I agree entirely with everything you said.
We do a lot more board games around the house now, and a lot less of the, okay, let's all go watch a show together.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot more, all right, let's sit down and play Catan, Junior Catan, or, some sort of collaborative game with the kids.
Oh, we're ferocious. We didn't do any junior anything. We went into real Catan right away. And now when my older son, he legitimately wins, I get like really salty about him. Like, all right, I see you. I was like, all right, harder game, let's go.
That's my daughter. My daughter has decided that she loves chess.
Oh boy. Okay.
And I was a casual chess player at best. And she still hasn't beaten me,
Yeah.
but she's come
You
real
you see it
close.
coming. You see it coming.
She's legitimately beat my wife once. And again, I'm not going to let her win,
Yeah.
but it's not far before she's going to
Yep.
take me down.
Yep.
But I, again, it's so interesting to see just how much life changes the older that they get.
Yes.
My daughter, um, are either one of your kids readers?
The older one has gotten into it. And I was actually going to tell you earlier, there is hope because the older one, he's in scouts and he's at a point now where he started doing things on his own without us nudging. It felt like we were doing 8 years of nudging and all of a sudden he's this new person. So he'll cook scrambled eggs on his own. He has started reading. He got to the city finals for swimming. And I was like, I didn't even know you're that strong a swimmer. He does public speaking at school without like being asked. He volunteers for things. And I'm like, who are you? So like all these things have suddenly unlocked, and he just kind of like I feel like dots started connected for him, and like this is the person he is now. I'm like, I'll take it.
Oh yeah. See, I'm waiting for that. My oldest has discovered reading, which is a
Hmm.
large bone of contention between her and her little brother.
Hmm.
Because now that it's summertime, we don't, we're not lucky enough to have a bunch of other kids in our neighborhood that are their age.
Hmm.
We're unfortunately right in between.
Okay.
There's a lot of neighbor kids that are now in that like 14, 15 age.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of neighbor kids that are down in that like 2 and under age.
Yep.
So they've got friends, but their friends live a little further away.
Yep.
So they're not able to have the friends to hang out with right here in the neighborhood. So there's a whole lot of, Lily, will you play with me? And it's,
That's like
I'm reading.
reading.
And then, dad jumps in and says, okay, I'll play with you, Patrick. What do you want to play?
Hmm.
But I'm hoping the reading bug will catch him soon because it would be nice to have the two of them doing it.
Definitely. Definitely.
Well, look, we are hitting right up at about an hour. And as much as I would love to, I'll hang out and talk to any dad for all day long.
I appreciate it.
Lord knows I can talk. But usually about an hour is where we try to put these
Sounds
things
good.
to an end because most people don't have much more than that.
It's That's the case.
Because
Yes.
we're parents.
Yes.
I do want to thank you for your time. I want to thank everybody that watched us live, and for all the people who are going to watch the replay of this later. I do apologize to the folks over on the West Coast. I know that 7 in the morning is a bit early on Friday morning to do this.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why we make sure all the replays are available. I want to thank everybody, all the membership of the National At Home Dad Network that makes things like our webinar series, like our podcast, our Dad's Gotta Talk mental health breakouts, our convention that's coming up in Milwaukee in September, that make all of these things possible through their membership. And if you do want to learn more about us, please check out our website. It is athomedad.org. You can find all the information you need there about everything we're doing. And in the meantime, everybody have a great day and get outside with your kids. Go for a bike ride. Go for a hike. It's always fun. All right.
Have a good one all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Yay!